Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Start Marketing Podcast. It's Joe Sanders again with you. Thanks for joining us. Today, we are going to talk about SEO as it relates to small and mid-sized businesses. With us again, we have John Duda, the expert at everything Google and SEO related. He will be walking us through this. But before we get into that, as I start every episode, I wanted to break down the 5 steps that we use to achieve successful digital marketing campaigns. This is all found in a book called Stop Posting, Start Marketing that you can get on Amazon, or check out more information at relevantelephant.net. The steps are as follows. Number 1, find the right audience. Number 2, create the right content. Number 3, promote your business as a brand. Number 4, use ample resources. And number 5, analyze the results. We have episodes individually on each one of those steps, as well as more resources for that, as a lot of other options and topics you can find and if you subscribe to our podcast. But let's dive right into it. So John, you're with us today. Back again. Thanks for joining us.
Good. Thanks, Joe. How you doing?
I'm well. So John, in case you know, is like this genius when it comes to all things. Oh, come on. You are. You're this genius.
I just worked in this industry for so damn long that I pretty much seen it all.
I have been in an office with this guy where he's on the phone telling somebody to switch the server from one part of the country to the other. And he actually has like a legitimate reason. This is the guy you want to talk to when you talk about SEO and Google. So, I think a lot of people listen to our show. We have a lot of small business owners, mid-sized business owners. And I don't know if all these people are engaged in SEO when it comes to their website. So let's just start out real basic. For somebody that is a small to mid-sized business, how important is search engine optimization to that particular, size business?
It depends. It depends on your business. It depends on what you're selling, how you're selling it, right? And it depends on many other factors. And so, one of the key things is, as you mentioned over here, is, understand your audience, right? So the audience for this, there's going to be people that are trying to do their own SEO, which is right. There's a group that says, hey, I've been using this firm SEO. I just don't know if I'm getting what I'm, the value that I'm paying for it. And then there's everything in between, the hybrids, where I do a little bit here, then I outsource my link building, or I do this, all of that, right? So it's all over the place. So this answer is kind of all over the place too, because the real honest long answer is it depends. It depends on a lot of things, but most people really need to look at from the very beginning. And I'm literally talking to the people that says, well, I don't really do any SEO. I don't even think it's valuable. I'm hearing that I hear all these horror stories about people, spending all these hundreds, if not thousands of dollars and not getting anything. Yeah. And they're really turned off by it. Right. Mm-hmm. And really what you need to focus on is there's no magic in it anymore. Right. When I worked at Bank of America for 17, 18 years, 2004, we had to evaluate the Google search engine. We literally took the covers off and said, why? Because we couldn't find anything in the damn bank. We couldn't find leaders guide, participants manuals, the training manuals, all of this. So and they were scattered by we bought a bank, and that was another merger, and there was just crap everywhere, right? So one of the things that we looked at is we looked at the hood inside of a search engine that says, well, how do I make this thing, how do I tune this? How do I configure it to find stuff? And really nothing has changed except the algorithm that you're tuning it. Now it's a big secret, and it's constantly changing almost daily. I think some people would say it's more, right? So leave that alone for a while, because they're tweaking and tuning it. But the heart of it, the basic concept, is always going to be the same. Mm-hmm. It's, they call it the internet is the super highway. Well, guess what? That super highway has roads. And the bigger the road, the higher the visibility you have. And what I mean by that is, if you have a small company and you Google your own company name and you can't find it, you got some problems. Yeah. Right. You at the very, very least, you should be able to know, because Google looks on what they predominantly go on what they call known item search. I know what I'm looking for in terms of a product, service, all that. In this case, I'm looking for, company XYZ, right? Right. Now, assuming that you don't have a name that is very, very easy to mistake for, 20 other companies that are out there, which they're going to get confused, right? Acme Chemical. I'm sure there's, 50 companies called Acme Chemical.
Right.
But if you have somewhat of a name that is kind of somewhat proprietary, not very generic, you should be able to be found.
Yeah.
More importantly, you should be able to be found for the very basic stuff that you offer, the basic services, specifically when you're offering those in a local area.
Okay. I love that they're using the analogy of like, the tune-up and the roads, because sometimes people ask me about SEO and they say exactly what you said, like, oh, it's a waste of money and I don't anything. And this is how I would explain to people. So if maybe there are some people listening to this don't even really know what search engine optimization really is. Well, search engine optimization is the way that Google reads your website. Okay. I'll explain to you this way using the same sort of analogy that John was using. You'd have two cars lined up, beautiful cars, identical. Beautiful. They look great. They both look like they could, go 150 miles an hour and everybody wants to drive it. Now, without looking any further at those cars, which one can go faster and has more performance than the other one? The only way to know is to pop the hood and have your mechanic look at it. Okay. That's how Google is looking at your website. You can have the most beautiful looking website in the world next to somebody else's website who's just beautiful as well. But it's in the engine. It's in what's behind the scenes. That's what Google's searching for. Google's looking at your website. And that's what really matters, is not so much how we see the website, but it's how Google sees the website, since everything that we do almost in the entire world, or at least in this country, is being done through Google search, right? So John, I'll pose this to you. If I'm somebody who's thinking about doing SEO, or if I have a mid-sized business and I really want to dive into this, what's a good place to start? If I don't really know anything about this, I don't really know if my website is working with an SEO, I don't know anything about it. What's a good place, or a couple things I can do?
Well, the first thing is to understand how your website is relative to your business, okay. Right? And if your website is done well and done with a specific purpose, it should be a virtual salesperson, right? Yeah. The days of a brochureware website where people say, "Well, tell me more about your company." Remember, what did you do? You had them a brochure, a leaflet, a pamphlet, and that's how early websites started out, as glorified brochures, right? Right. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen a brochure, maybe if you walk into a car dealership, maybe, but I haven't seen a brochure like that handed out in eons, right? Everything is check us out online. Why? Because it changes. Printing shops have been dying left and right because everything is digital, right? So if you start from brochureware, you have to have that ability to communicate to your clients about what do you have, what type of service is it, how much is it, where can I get it, how can I get it, how can I contact you, could I even buy it on your site? So if you look at it from that perspective, you say to self, well, to what point actually is it a glorified brochure? Do I just have my name, my phone number, and email address, and pretty much that's it? All right, which almost it's useless at this point. And then when I say it's useless, because one of the key things is people say, well, SEO doesn't work. It's not that it doesn't work. It's just everybody else has already surpassed you to the point you may be in a position where it says it really won't work for you. There right. Truly are companies that just said, hey, your top 12 competitors or even 7 competitors have been doing it for the last 4 years. If you just woke up now, it really may be too late. There are some companies where you look at it and say, wow, you got such an uphill climb to do that it's beyond tweaking and tuning.
So how would somebody figure that out? Like, where would they go online to say, hey, I see my site for what it is, and I think it's a nice looking site and it does what I want it to do. But yeah, it could be. But how do I know how Google is searching that site? How do I know what words I'm being searched for, or all these kinds of things? How does a novice or a layperson do that?
Simple, because if you have any sort of a marketing plan, you have a pretty good idea who your audience is, right? Right. You should. If you're a plumber, you know exactly what they're searching for. If you're whatever product you're selling, you have an idea of what that product is. Right. And if you know that customer even halfway, you have a pretty good idea of what they're probably going to be looking for, right? Plumber near me, or whatever that product is.
But how do I know if Google is ranking my website for the words plumber near me?
All you got to do is look. Well, first, most importantly, you really have to have a pretty good idea of what is it that people are searching for when they are looking for a product or service, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
You really have to know that. And if you don't, ask them. Literally ask them. Ask them. I go, hey, if you wanted I sell widgets, and if you're looking for a widget, what would you buy? And they'll probably sell, widget company near me, those types of keywords, right? Mm-hmm. And then there are all these long tail keywords, right? Purple widgets company near Orland Park, right? Those are longer. Why? No, because you're adding more words to the search.
Okay.
Ironically, the more words you add, the more fine tune you add it, the easier it is, because you might be competing with the biggest widget maker in the world, but you may have purple widgets just in the area, and then you have them in stock. So all of a sudden, you see how that game changes, where now you actually can play with a behemoth. You can be the David playing with that Goliath. Right. You just got to play with on different terms.
So sometimes what you're saying, I think, is that, okay, so if we're selling widgets, and so is 100 other companies, we may not be able to be found there if we're not doing widgets. But if we're the only company that has the yellow widget that everybody wants, mm-hmm. there might be a smaller search volume for the term mm-hmm. yellow widget, but it's so directed that it would have a higher conversion rate if I'm the only one that has it, right? So what you're saying is the difference between the general terms and then the more specific, or what you're saying, the short and the long tail keywords. And you're saying that, I think what you're saying is the trick is to understand where you fall, right, within your industry compared to your competition. Is that
correct? Okay. That's exactly right. So you may start off there, because but you really have to look at it. And if you're going to go ahead and compete with the larger guys, and you come up with just a regular, like we mentioned your car analogy, it's a daily driver, and you're competing with people that race on the Indies and all these other racetracks, you're going to have a very uphill climb. And so you see a lot of those people just give up. They're like, oh, there's no way I'm going to win it. And they're probably right. So they give up. But there are other ways, cheaper ways to get into that. And we call those long tail keywords.
Right. And so these words that are being searched, this is all content on my website, right? This is all my posts, my blog posts, the content on there. So if I have a website that only has like 2 or 3 pages on it, not a lot of content, one way for me to bounce up my search term, or to get ranked higher or get ranked at all, would be to just add a lot of content to my website. Is that true?
A lot of good relative content that's worth reading.
Okay.
That used to be true. And that's how we have all of these companies doing what these call these article spinning. They would just pay somebody to write an article, just write anything, as long as you have those words in there. Yeah. Well, guess what? They look at if you have those articles, but they also look at how many people are reading those articles and what value those articles have to them, right? So right. It's starting to become more. It's that EAT. It's the EAT thing, the EAT, right? And right. E stands for expertise, A stands for authoritativeness, and T stands for trust. Okay. They're looking at those 3, and the algorithm that I talked about of 15 years ago has changed severely, because it's not more counting words, counting pages, counting sentences. It's counting who is actually seeing these, how long they're staying, are they forwarding that link? Remember, Google's looking inside Gmail. They're looking at this type of stuff constantly, right? And Google wants to do one thing. Google wants to do one thing and one thing only. And I hate to hark on them on this one, but Google wants to make sure that their brand is protected. Yeah. People say, well, just Google it. Why do they use that word, Google it? Because they know that if you Google it, the results that Google show you, they're going to be very nice.
Absolutely. And no, that's good. And the other thing I think we should mention is this is not going to be, we're not going to take you through every step of how to do SEO properly. We would need to do a series of podcasts on this for probably some hours of time. But just to break down it just for basic terms for people, let's talk about a blog post. So I read a blog post, and I read it because I'm a person, and I go, oh, that's a nice blog post. But but John, maybe you could give me an insight. This would be the same for a website too. How is Google reading that blog post or that web page? What things are Google saying that the layperson who's just reading it can't see or can't analyze as quickly?
Well, Google is looking at it in a couple of different ways. First of all, they look at, is this their first blog post? Are you just woke up one day and decided to write a blog post? Have you wrote several of these? So they're really looking at the author, who created it, what's the website, and then are you a Johnny come lately? This is why that authoritativeness takes a little while to build. And again, they call that Google has a war on small business. It's not really a war. It's just harder to climb that hill. So people say, well, you just need some blogs and start spitting them out. And yeah, you need some blogs and you just need to start writing them. But until you write some, you're kind of in that Google sandbox where you're like, well, you've only written 3 articles and it's only been seen by, 137 people. We're just going to have to mature you a little bit long. So it's a long-term process. But let me just interject something in here because people go, well, it's a long-term process. Remember you asked, well, how do I know where I'm ranking? Simple, just look.
Right.
Just look, just understand your audience, understand if you're what they're actually going to be putting in that search engine, right? And then see where you come up with. And you'll be surprised that all your competitors are coming up ahead of you, right? Yeah. And then ask yourself, oh, shoot, all right, you can't manage what you can't measure. So at least write it down. Today, I'm on page 4, fourth spot on number 4. And watch yourself grow up as for that particular keyword. You're going to get to one of the most important pluses for Google AdWords is for SEO is to either replace or augment Google AdWords, right? If you want to be on the very top of Google, simple, set up a Google AdWords account, trudge through it, set up your and pay Google an arm and a leg, and you're going to be number 1. So now if you're a plumber in Orland Park or whatever your product, whatever you want to bid, you just give Google your credit card and say, hey, I'm willing to pay whatever it takes. You're going to be number 1. It's just that simple, right? And you're going to ring that register and a bunch of people are going to go to your website and some will decide to call you, right? And that's what Google wants and is working. I'm basically saying is find out how much you're paying, and it's going to be a lot. Gone are the days where you can buy a Google AdWords for 50 cents or $1. Now it's 20, 30, 40 bucks. Beverly Hills Plumber is like going for like $130, $145 a click.
Yeah.
A click.
Right.
That doesn't mean you're going to get the call, right? Now that's kind of on the high end, but so some of the things you can do is when you get something organically, even though you're not number 1, you can be in the 6th position. And you can say, hey, there is a client of mine that's kind of recent that sells bean bags, right? And those beanbag games, cornhole bags, right?
Absolutely,
all over, right? That's the national piece. It doesn't really matter if you want to buy a cornhole boards and bags. It doesn't really matter where you are. That's a national search, right? I can be in Nebraska or Rhode Island. I'm going to still come up. So there's 135,000 people a month searching for the word cornhole boards.
Okay.
Google will tell you that, right? The average price for each one of those clicks is, I don't know. I think it was let's say it's $2.50. I can't remember offhand. It's $2.50 a click. Well, it tells you pretty quickly how that adds up. If you're in the number 6 position, it'll tell you that you're getting about, if you do the calculation, that you're getting about $800 to $1,000 of free ads.
Really?
Google's not advertising it, but it's like your position on number 6 organically without paying Google is an equivalent to about X number of dollars of spending Google ads. And you can start to eat away at this because if you're not on Google, you have to be on Google because either be organically found or paying for it, right? That's where the biggest form of leads are coming from. And so, let's circle back to that question, should you do SEO? Well, the real answer is, well, if you don't, you're going to have to pay Google to come up.
Yeah. I mean, you got to pay for it either way, but Google really is is where it's at. And just to clarify, the SEO for search engine optimization is the opposite of SEM, which is search engine marketing, which is where you buy the ads. This is more of the organic. But when you're building a site though, and you're writing a blog and everything, just remember that, just like John said, even though the content might be really good and it might be fresh and funny, if Google's not reading it the way that Google wants to read it, where you're ranking for things, it may not matter as much. So it actually is more important in this day and age to write something where Google reads it and likes it, that helps you rank, as opposed to writing something that might be like enjoyable for somebody to read. And then there's all these other things that you have to put in there when you write a post or you build a page. You have to put in the meta tags, you have to put in the headings, and all these things, and some which the user will see and some which they won't. All these things, along with your the EAT, right? The frequency of how you do it and the trustworthiness, all this stuff builds up to Google and makes an impression on them to say, hey, my website is somewhere where you should visit, or maybe it's not for these keywords. And so a fresh approach, I think John and I would both agree, regardless of your small or mid-sized business, having some kind of an SEO program, or at least understanding where you are in the SEO world. If you decide not to pursue a more proactive approach, at least you know where you're ranking. I would recommend some sites like SEMrush. What else? What other ones out there, John, where you can put your website? Moz, yeah. You can put your website in there, and it will tell you how Google is reading it. Are you ranking for words? And you may not be, and you might not care. But you also might see a few and say, hey, I thought I was doing really well with, I'm getting blah blah blah, and you can have a proactive approach in fixing it. So that's some things you can do. And yeah, but I think overall SEO is a really important and valuable step. John, before we go, one more quick thing. I want you to touch a little bit on Google My Business and how this affects SEO. And this will probably be more relevant to small and mid-sized businesses who maybe you're not doing an all-in or proactive approach to SEO. So how does Google My Business fit into all this?
Well, Google My Business is strictly local. It's basically the local. And it came from, I think, the fact is that, well, let me just say plumber, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a plumber and you go on there and say plumber in Orland Park, I'm just using Orland Park as an example, right?
Right.
Well, guess what? One of the things that it had to do is, how does Google know? Well, they know obviously you got a plumbing site, but how do you know when you're a plumber, that you're an actual plumber, and versus just plumbing advice or plumbing supply, plumbing whatever, right? And so now you have all of these, let's say you have 20 plumbing companies in Orland Park. Well, each one is now going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So, and the next thing is all the other towns near Orland Park, if you're big enough, well, whatever maybe Homer Glen, right? There's another that's kind of touching Orland Park. So what these people have been doing is to get those keywords is to say, I don't want my main site to rank. I want a specific landing page within my website. So this person in Orland Park created a, plumber in Homer Glen. And guess what? It's basically telling Google, hey, I'm a plumber. And, I also do stuff in Homer Glen. Here are my rates. Here are my, all of that stuff. And then an interesting phenomenon started happening. It started and so now if you're a big plumber in Chicago, they had a specific site for every single city and within 50 miles of Chicago, right? It got to well, maybe not 50, but it was it was a lot of those. So Google basically said, all right, this is crazy. So they came up with Google My Business, and at first they said, well, you don't even need a website because it's just Google. Think of it, Google My Business as like a Facebook page. You just put your name up there, you put your logo up there, you put your phone number, they validate it. And once they validate it, you can then do posts, you can do products, you can do your times and all that stuff like that.
Right.
Google My Business is now very, very important for local. Yeah. Very important. Yeah. Mostly because then Google decided, so wait a second, Angie's List and all these other guys are eating our lunch. Well, let's Google is so big, they could just pound Angie's List to the ground. Right. And then Yelp started going in there, and with the reviews and all that. So Google's like, well, we can do this. There was a point in time where Yelp was just about to go bye-bye. Right. They signed a massive contract. And believe me, they wrote there's a lot of money being exchanged between Yelp and Google for that, because Yelp was basically about Google can crush anybody that they want when they want it.
Right. Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so they came up with Google My Business, and it's very important. It's kind of, think of it as a mini site that is specifically meant towards product or services of local businesses.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And pizza restaurants, the stuff that you're not going to drive. So you're not going to drive 30 miles for a good pizza. Maybe you are, but
well, maybe here.
But maybe you drive 30 miles for that steak or that
Right.
something very right. And similarly to a person who's doing cleaning your carpets may not want to drive 30, 40 miles, but wants to only get people within 6 or 7 miles of their home, because driving is wasting hours. And if I have to drive to a customer's house for an hour and drive back, it's the equivalent, and then clean his carpets for 1 hour. That's the equivalent of 3 hours that I just went by. So Google My Business is however, it's not like a Facebook. Posting on there is very different, because Google wants to see, they want to see value add. So they're looking for offers. They're looking for special announcements. They're looking for something that people go, oh, wow, right? They're really looking for a wow factor. And so if you put in whatever you're searching for, any kind of product or service, that is now outranking everything else, because they show that above your actual website. It was gotten to a point, Joe, where you didn't even almost need a website. And Google said that you don't even need a website to rank.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Then the fakesters came out, and then they had fake accounts, fake Google My Business accounts. They would do one for here, they would do one for there, do one for there. And they would put, and then Google had such a, look it up, just Google My Business fraud. And it was really, and I hit the pinnacle like in end of 2019, where it was just insane. And then they said, okay, well, what can we do to kind of rein it back? And one of the things they did is they said, okay, well, your website now does matter. And we're going to go back and we're going to take a lot of cues from that. And now it's that balance. And that balance is constantly shifting. So it goes back to how well is your website? Because eventually you're going to either A, call them, or you're going to B, go to their website. And that website better have some content on there.
Yeah. Great. No, that's really interesting. And it's funny. Well, it's just interesting, I think, how quickly Google My Business has gone from like this little thing that we kind of did to like something that now marketers and digital marketers are looking at every day. It's making quite a big splash. So, again, I think to wrap this all up, if you're a small to mid-sized business, you're not doing any proactive SEO, you're not really sure if your website is ranking, I think John and I would both, advise you, take a look at it, see where you're at, see where you rank, see where your competition ranks, and decide, is this something that I want to pursue? Regardless of what you're doing in that regard, make sure you have your head wrapped around Google My Business. Make sure your account is certified. Make sure it's set up properly, all the information, and make sure you're posting on it as often as you need to, at least a couple times a week, so as to keep that moving and keep yourself being found in the categories that you're searching for. And then, a full-on SEO program is going to be something that I think is worthwhile, depending on your business, depending on your industry, but it's usually a long-term play. But the organic search that can come, the value of organic search when somebody's searching for your product can't be understated. It can be incredibly powerful. And one little spot moving from 4th to 5th, or from 3rd to 2nd, or from 7th to 8th can make a big difference in your business and how much traffic is actually heading to your website. So, hey, John, thanks so much. We really appreciate all your efforts and your expertise on this today. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to our podcast. I'm sure there's a button somewhere on your screen or on your phone somewhere that you can subscribe. We like to put this content on as much as we possibly can on all different kinds of topics. Again, please, if you have any questions, anything related to this topic or anything has digital marketing in general, please visit us on Facebook, Instagram, or go to relevantelephant.net. Shoot us a message. We'll be happy to get back to you. Check out the book, Stop Posting, Start Marketing. It's on Amazon. It has information like this and a lot of other things. And this is Joe saying, until next time, stop posting, start marketing.